strategy in responding to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now from the White House. Jack, good afternoon. What's the president saying about the war?
Well, there's no clear sign of tension slowing down in the Middle East. President Trump saying that the U.S. may or may not strike Iran's nuclear sites this morning. And then he said this.
Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they got hit. Remember 60 days? And then came the 60. 61 is going to become a very famous number. That was one hell of a hit. That first hit, that was one hell of a hit. Not sustainable, to be honest. That's where it ended. It ended on the first night.
We have President Trump there reiterating his comments that during negotiations he gave Iran 60 days to make a nuclear deal, and that they were struck on day 61 by Israel, with the U.S. still maintaining that the U.S. has no involvement in that. President Trump also mentioned that Iran reached out to him for a possible visit to the White House to discuss negotiations for talks, but he said that it's very late for that. Iran denying this. Take a look.
Very simple words, a very simple, unconditional surrender. That means I've had it. Okay, I've had it, I give up, no more. Then we go blow up all the, all the nuclear stuff that's all over the place there. No, they had bad intentions. For 40 years they've been saying death to America, death to Israel, death to anybody else that they didn't like. They were bullies. They were schoolyard bullies. And now they're not bullies anymore, but we'll see what happens. Look, nothing's finished until it's finished. War is very complex. A lot of bad things can happen. A lot of turns are made. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that we won anything yet. I would say that we sure as hell made a lot of progress. And we'll see. The next week is going to be very big. Maybe less than a week. Maybe less. But is there anybody here that said it would be okay to have a hostile, very, zealots, really, but to have a hostile country have a nuclear weapon that could destroy 25 miles, but much more than that, could destroy other nations just by the breeze blowing the dust. That dust blows to other nations and they get decimated. This is just not a threat you can have.
So we have President Trump calling on Iran for an unconditional surrender. Iran's supreme leader responding, Ayatollah Khamenei, saying that it will never surrender, and that if U.S. military gets involved in this, that it will begin striking U.S. targets. Now, meanwhile, all of these comments come on the White House lawn as President Trump unveiled flagpoles, new flagpoles that he calls a gift from him, reaching about roughly 100 feet tall. Trump also called on the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, to cut interest rates just ahead of his announcement on interest rate setting in about a half an hour from now. Take a look.
We should be 2 points lower. It'd be nice to be 2.5 points lower. We'd be saving $800 billion, $700 billion. That's a lot of money. Take it for nothing, for absolutely nothing. We'd save $600, $700, $800 billion. We have, I think we're 38th now in interest, and we should be number one. We should be the lowest.
Now, Trump has long called on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates and thus stimulate the economy. Don.
And Jack, the U.S. is now working to evacuate American citizens out of Israel. Can you talk to us about what we know about this so far?
Right. So the U.S. is announcing, the State Department announcing today that they're working to evacuate those U.S. citizens in Israel by means of boat or plane. Let's take a look at U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee's statement this morning on X. He wrote, American citizens wanting to leave Israel, U.S. Embassy in Israel is working on evacuation flights and cruise ship departures. You must enroll, however, in the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or STEP. Now, it's unclear how many Americans are seeking to depart Israel, or even if the U.S. military will be involved in this at all. And that's as the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem announced today that it's going to be closing its doors, shutting down from today through Friday, saying that it's because of increased security risks. Now, according to Israeli authorities, since Friday, Iran has launched around 400 missiles at Israel, 40 of which breached the Iron Dome, killing about 24 people in Israel so far. Don, back to you.
All right, Jack, as always, thank you. Next, Senator Lindsey Graham said he talked with President Trump last night on Iran. He told reporters if diplomacy fails, you use force. Listen.
Do you think
you either want to do away with their nuclear program or you don't? Diplomacy didn't work. For 60 days, he sent emissaries, nothing to show for it. So either you want them to have a nuclear weapon or you don't. And if you don't, if diplomacy fails, you use force. So if you don't understand that Iran with a nuclear weapon is the biggest danger in the world, you're missing a lot. If you don't understand this is a religious Nazi regime, you're not listening to what they say. So all these people are talking about what if. Well, how can it be any worse? The guy in charge wants to kill all the Jews, reshape Islam in his own image, and come after us. November the 4th is Death to America Day in Iran. So the idea, well, what happens next? It can only get better. It can't be any worse. If the next guy wants to kill all the Jews and Americans, we've lost nothing. If the next person wants to live in peace, that'd be a big gain. So if you're president, you got to make hard decisions in real time. If you're sitting in the bleachers and you're uninformed, it's kind of a dangerous moment. You need to understand the regime. You need to understand their strain of Shiism is very, very radical. If you don't get that, you missed a lot.
Unrest in the Middle East has crossed over into the crypto industry. Public records show hackers stole at least $90 million from Iran's largest crypto exchange. In a post on X, Nobitex explained that the exchange detected unauthorized access to its infrastructure. Nobitex said its website and app will be unavailable for the foreseeable future as it investigates. It said it will share an update on how users will be able to safely access their assets again. Blockchain analysis firm Elliptic said that the stolen funds were sent to inaccessible wallets. The same group who took credit for a hack on Iran's bank, SEPA, are taking credit for this one. The hacking group, Predatory Shadow, said on X that it targeted Nobitex for allegedly funding terrorism for Iran. Israeli strikes on Iran have entered a sixth day, and talk of possible U.S. involvement is intensifying. Writing on X, Vice President J.D. Vance said President Trump may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. The U.S. is the only country with conventional weapons capable of targeting Iran's underground Fordow nuclear facility. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details on the so-called bunker buster.
Buried 260 feet beneath a mountain lies the Iranian regime's Fordow. The uranium enrichment facility is Tehran's second largest, but destroying it would require massive ordnance, the kind only the United States possesses. Center for a New American Security Fellow Carlton Haylig explains.
First, it's penetrating hard and deeply buried targets. Think something like a bunker or a facility that's built within a mountain. And these are also timed within the fuses of the weapons so that they don't explode immediately upon impact.
This is the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, commonly known as a bunker buster.
The GBU-57, which is the massive ordnance penetrator that's being discussed heavily in terms of American involvement in Iran, can actually penetrate up to 200 feet before detonating its ordnance.
Each GBU-57 weighs 30,000 pounds. According to Haylig, the bomb is the best option for penetrating targets like Fordow.
In the case of the massive ordnance penetrator, it is the only weapon in anyone's arsenal globally that's able to successfully target and potentially even eliminate facilities like Fordow.
Haylig explains that the GBU-57 was designed for other U.S. adversaries, but it's never been used in combat.
Initially, that was in terms of North Korea, later expanded to target sets including Iran as well. And even then, it's not a guarantee that one or even two of these weapons would be able to successfully take Fordow offline.
Despite its destructive power, a singular GBU-57 wouldn't be enough to destroy Fordow.
The Air Force actually has, as part of their kind of operational concept for attacking targets such as Fordo would actually plan to use several of these munitions deployed through several aircraft.
Haley elaborates, painting a picture of what a Fordo bombing mission could look like.
So it wouldn't just be a single munition dropped or even two from one airplane. It would be multiple strikes kind of barreling down into that target set over time, kind of drilling down towards the target.
Haley adds that, despite the bomb's destructive capabilities, there's no guarantee they'll be able to hit the facility. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz praised the Israeli army, saying they're doing the dirty work for us in Iran. In an interview with the German public broadcaster on the sidelines of the G7 summit, Merz said the regime in Tehran had brought death and destruction to the world.
This is the dirty work that Israel's doing for all of us. I can only say that I have the greatest respect for the fact that the Israeli army had the courage to do this. The Israeli leadership had the courage to do this. Otherwise, we might have seen months and years more of this regime's terror, and then possibly with a nuclear weapon in their hands.
And Israelis are finally returning home after airport closures left thousands stranded abroad. 2 flights from Cyprus landed in Tel Aviv this morning, the first to arrive since the Israel-Iran conflict began. Israel had shut its airspace to commercial traffic after Iran launched missiles toward the country. An estimated 50,000 Israeli nationals are still trying to get back. Israel's Ella Airlines is operating repatriation flights from Paris, Rome, Milan, and Athens, with 2 smaller airlines also joining the effort. Meanwhile, a cruise ship carrying evacuees from Israel arrived in Cyprus earlier today. It will now begin transporting stranded Israelis from Cyprus back home, with 2 crossings planned. Chinese President Xi Jinping broke his silence on the escalating Israel-Iran conflict, expressing concern and calling for de-escalation during a summit in Kazakhstan. His remarks came a day after China warned its citizens to leave Iran due to ongoing Israeli airstrikes. And joining us now to discuss where China stands amid the Israel-Iran conflict is Casey Fleming, CEO, Black Ops Partners Corporation and National Security Advisor. Casey, good afternoon. Do you think China would actually come to Iran's aid if the conflict escalates further? And what form of aid might we see?
Well, initially, you're going to see support for the military munitions, maybe even food aid, that kind of thing initially. But if the U.S. gets involved, you can probably see China get involved as well. China's master plan is China being the grand puppeteer with Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea in their axis. And it's part of the grand plan to create all this chaos and disturbance and confusion throughout the rest of the world for eventual takeover by the Chinese Communist Party. So this is all part of the CCP's grand plan. Now, what they're going to say is plausible deniability at first, and then, of course, using different tactics to throw people off. But the plan is absolute support of Iran. The more that they can structure confusion, terror, and so on, the more it throws the U.S. off of our balance.
Does it have anything to consider? What are its considerations when deciding whether to support Iran or not, especially right now?
Well, that's something that they know internally from the outside as a group studying the CCP for many years. It's really the ultimate goal is complete takeover of the world. So this is a regional conflict. They want to keep it regional, but if the U.S. gets involved in other ways, you'll see that it'll be a tit for tat. If the U.S. gets involved by bunker busters, maybe the CCP might get involved in bombing Israel, just in a tit for tat to show that they are equal to the CCP, to show that they're equal to the United States. I wouldn't put anything past the CCP other than that they know that a showdown is, in our belief, in our estimation, imminent between China and the United States.
So is there a possibility, from what I'm hearing, that this conflict could bring the U.S. and China in a sort of proxy standoff?
Absolutely. Very well a proxy standoff. It also might give the license in the CCP's minds to go after Taiwan. We expect them to go after Taiwan in late 26 or early 27, but it may speed up that agenda by this regional skirmish and say, U.S., you came, you did a foul, so we're going to do a foul too. So CCP has been prepping their population and their military for war for a long period of time. And, anything is game at this point. It's the world is actually a tinderbox right now. And I don't want to make people feel nervous, but it's exactly what's going on.
Okay, then can you describe the nature of the relationship between China and Iran? And it's important because we got to know how much of their interests are actually aligned.
Well, the interests are aligned to the extent that they want to dethrone the United States and the rest of the Western world. So their interests are completely aligned at the strategic level. It's what they do tactically is anyone's guess, and everything that's done tactically, if it's not measured correctly, could escalate the war very, very quickly. So they're aligned strategically to defeat the West and the Western world of order and replace it with the Chinese Communist Party at the center of that web. And they are playing their enemies. Russia is very fearful of China, even though they're considered blood brothers together. That's what Xi Jinping and Putin say. Russia is very, very nervous of China in the future as a future enemy. And the same thing, China cannot be trusted. China is a ruthless totalitarian regime, a very dark regime that cannot be trusted, and they play to win. So this is a very, very serious time. This is not just a regional conflict this time. China is much more involved, although they'll play it coolly up front, even till the end. They'll play it, say, well, we didn't do anything. We're not behind anything. So it's always the deception piece of it that's always part of the CCP.
All right, if Israel succeeds, let's say, in destroying Iran's nuclear program, or if the Iranian regime falls, how would that affect China?
Well, it depends on who's going to come back in and rule Iran. Are they going to be supporting the CCP mission and strategy to dethrone and defeat the West and take over as the single global superpower? And if that regime, so the CCP will try to put their own people in to get, whether voted in or thrown in, if this dark regime in Iran ceases to exist. So if it's that piece of it, you can see that the CCP is going to try to put their own people in so they can control, or you can see other actions to dethrone whoever comes in to take over this regime, should this regime come out of power.
I'm wondering if you can also comment on how much does Iran depend on China, because it's reported that China buys nearly 90% of Iran's oil. What is China's influence on Iran?
That's considerable. It's absolutely, it's the #1 producer of Iranian oil. And I'm a consumer of Iranian produced oil. They are also turning it back around and processing and sending it back as rocket fuel back to Iran. So it's a symbiotic relationship to the extent that China can control that relationship.
Okay, all right, Casey, thank you very much for your time today. It's always great to talk to you.
Thank you.